Welcome to In Tune with Reality, the stories behind the music. Episode 2: What It Really Takes to Become a Musician. Okay, so hello Boris, I'm so happy we can finally do this.
I'm so happy to see you in person.
Yes, so let's start. So today we're going to talk about the reality of music students coming into college and how that um happens to be for some a privilege and for others a tragedy.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you, what are some common misconceptions about pursuing a degree in music, and how can educators and institutions better prepare students for the realities of the field?
Well, it's a loaded question, yeah, and I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is what is a degree in music? You see, that's even our degrees, like as performers, let's say, it's not as if everybody who gets the same degree ends up doing exactly the same thing. And I think these days more than ever, musicians need to be aware of what is happening around the world, what is happening in this profession, what is happening within their own instrument. We're dealing very often with people who have very high ambitions, which is very good, which is an important thing, but with a lack of understanding of what, not just what it takes. That's something you can actually learn a lot during the process, but also how much is being missed prior to actually coming to college. I'm seeing it personally when I work with students outside of violin, not just violin, when we're talking about basic skills such as theory skills, oral skills, music history. We are forgetting that being a musician is not a physical act. You have to actually know a little bit more. And the most important thing, I think, is that this notion of putting the responsibility on the institution, that by the time I'm done with my 4 years, I'm a consummate musician, is an absolutely flawed one. It couldn't be more wrong. Not because we're taking the responsibility away from the institution. That's not what I'm saying. But I always personally viewed, especially the college experience, as an open canvas of opportunities that I must tap into to actually learn a little bit about how this works. What if I do that? Yeah. For me, college is more of a laboratory that you have to keep experimenting and hopefully fail a lot. But if we're in a practice room practicing our scales for 4 years and then we expect to go out and all of the red carpet is there for us, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And I think you know a lot about this because you've been quite active outside the classic term of being a music student.
Yeah.
And you know exactly how I think about what you're doing and how much I admire that. But again, even what you do is one aspect, right? Is one reality of who you are, and there are many others.
Mm-hmm.
So actually you're kind of a chameleon in many ways, as well as a musician. In today's world, being that kind of entrepreneurial is the right way to go, because we spoke about this before. We are not always aware of how many similarities we have, for example, with the sports world. Yeah, we're kind of athletes to a certain degree. Musicians get injured, fatigue, lack of sleep. See, I'm always under the impression, if a musician goes to sleep at 3 a.m. and wakes up really early, and then after 2 weeks the musician has fatigue and it starts affecting their ears, intonation, physical being, yeah, an athlete will never be allowed to do that.
No, definitely.
Because the coach will be like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
You have a reputation to maintain. You're here either under a scholarship, if it's a basketball player or a football player, right? Your results speak for themselves. Plus, we spoke once about the idea of what it's like to be an Olympic athlete, where there are only a few that you will be able to do due to age restriction, and that age, yeah. I'm not saying that musicians have specifically that restriction, but at the same time, I'm using these examples to convey that this idea that I'm gonna come and I'm gonna become this thing, because that is so away from what's actually is going on. And when I'm teaching either violin or whatever else I'm teaching, half of the class always somehow is being related to how you're thinking about music. What is it that you are doing this for? Just because you love it? Many people love music.
Yeah.
They're not musicians, though. And I feel like a lot of people are confusing the idea of them being in music, however they see it, versus music being part of their lives. It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
Very different thing. Because if you're in this profession to be important and powerful and popular, then music is secondary to you completely.
Correct.
And but if you're willing, like I remember speaking to you about this when I came here, there was no like, oh, top player. I was surrounded by amazing players. I will gladly even, I mean, maybe not right now, but I will name them any day. Some of them know exactly who I'm talking about. They have wonderful positions around the world. Some of them are wonderful soloists. Some of them are wonderful orchestral musicians. And again, and even that does not represent only what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But, learning is not just by going for a lesson. It's by making sure you're watching your colleagues carefully, your teachers. It's not just doing one thing because I like to do this alone. I actually had this discussion not long ago with a woodwind player who is very talented. But they came with the impression that they're going to be practicing and focusing only on their instrument. And it's amazing how many problems that created along the line. Because they realized that, maybe I can play the instrument, but I have nothing else to offer but my fast scales or, and then suddenly you realize, oh my, you know very well that I believe that the biggest satisfaction in our profession is where colleagues that you respect want to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing more rewarding. No competition prize, no anything would ever be more rewarding to know that the people you admire, they admire what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But to earn that, especially from people who are doing it on such a high level, by playing fast and loud.
Mm. But I think that here we're already talking about a musician that has established some kind of level of execution, some kind of goals. But we are seeing a bunch of students coming into college with no idea of what they want to be, of what they want to do. It's like, oh, I went through high school, I graduated, I failed, I didn't get into the career I wanted. Oh, this must be fun. Oh, let's go for music. Let's go for music education, or
Yes. Just to play. I mean, you're absolutely correct. There's absolutely no denial. But on the other hand, we cannot say that this cannot happen in any other profession.
Absolutely. But we are the only one that requires practical skills. Meaning you have to deliver and play an instrument.
Correct.
If you go for law school, you have to learn a lot, and you have to read a lot, and you have to write a lot.
But you can start from scratch.
And you can, because who has previous training in law before going to school.
Yeah, very
Who
few.
has previous training in med school before going to med school?
Yeah.
Because my mom is a psychiatrist and she
Mm.
did not have any of
I
it
see.
before going. Because it's a career that can actually be developed throughout the
Throughout the
years.
years.
And that's why it's so hard to get in. That's why it's so difficult, so demanding, so incredibly competitive. Because you have to do that during that time frame.
You're right.
And you have to be prepared for it.
You're right.
You have to have certain level of cognitive abilities and many other things and I understand that, but when it comes to music, how are you hoping to learn how to play an instrument when you are age 18, when you didn't have previous training, and then pushing yourself to be or to play like someone else that is on your studio when you did not have that training?
You're absolutely right. It is very hard, but at the same time, you know, we witness some exceptions. There are always exceptions
Absolutely.
to the rule, and we admire those people
Mhm.
tremendously. We know some of them ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in that case, the conversation should be actually directed towards what is musical education,
There we go.
and not even so much about college, but mostly. I just had a couple of conversation with people I had in skills that were not doing so well,
Mhm.
and you know, it's always a little awkward where they remember me as the harsh one.
Mhm.
Yeah. I asked them, you know, I see them a semester later, and they ask them, so how are things going? And they look at me and they're like, I can't thank you enough for being so harsh on me, because right now things are so much easier for me. But at the time, I'm sure it wasn't that nice.
Yeah. And especially during that process of adaptation. It's like
Correct.
I just came here. Oh, this is what I actually have to learn. This is what I actually have to do. Also, this is what it's supposed to be. And then you are exposed to this new, because also it depends a lot on the professor
Mm-hmm.
and the way that they approach the
Mm-hmm.
class. But no matter how the professor presents the class, is way easier when you have an understanding of what it is.
First of all, it's absolutely true. Also, we're talking about a fundamental approach where music is a language. I keep talking about this all the time. I'm not saying anything new. Everybody knows what I'm saying. Music is a language. It's a language that can be developed with anyone. I don't believe this thing about being talented or not talented. I think it's a very nice way to divide, you know, the group of people. It's not true, and it's not a representation. But you see, certain things is in regards to music is being a language. If you start learning a language properly, you are yourself what, trilingual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you know exactly how that feels. If that practice of using that language is done in a way where you have no way to actually interact with someone, you cannot really claim you know it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because a language is used to communicate.
Absolutely.
So when we have somebody who has no understanding of basically how a language works, but they're demanding to play Tchaikovsky concerto, it's like saying, oh, yesterday I learned how to run, so tomorrow I'm gonna, you know,
do a 5K marathon.
5K marathon. But for some reason in music, very often that's fine. I think what really bothers me about what you're saying, and this is very important, is this idea that we're gonna reward for the attempt. It's a very, very unhealthy one in music.
A good job to try.
Because reward for the attempt in music, it's really hard to actually determine. This is where actually we're very different than sports, right? In sports, there is a clear winner.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody crossed the line 1st,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody scored more points than someone else, and
Absolutely.
whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you going to determine the value of the effort in music? Show me some kind of graph measurement
yeah.
that will determine that, oh, they deserve the. So everything is up for interpretation. But when you're dealing with a world that is completely up for interpretation, that's exactly when things start. It's becoming a very blurry line.
Mm-hmm.
What is, what isn't, what is worthy, what is not. And that's why we speak about this quite a bit, where we cannot see really where is this line in which we are seeing what is happening and what is not. So going back to your original point, when people come in without those basic skills and suddenly through 4 years they need to catch up, as you say, to the point that, well, once again, are everybody going to catch up exactly to that point? That what is that point as well? That's also kind of hard to say. That's why for me the idea of early musical education, the importance is that when you teach math, you will start by plus, minus, division, right? But for some reason, music has not been viewed as a language, a proper language with an alphabet,
Mm-hmm.
with
Phonetics and syntax
correct,
and all
yeah,
of these things.
like how to say, how not to say.
Mm-hmm.
We know this because we've been through it for so many years. We know that there's so many different levels to this.
But even beyond that, it comes as simple as we are amazing at identifying, but we are very bad at defining. You have a student that comes to the lesson and is able to play all the slurred notes written in the music, is able to play all the high position notes that they have, all the bow strokes. And as soon as you ask the student, what is a slur? They have no idea.
Yes.
They have no idea that slur is a curved line that is meant to tie two or more notes, and there are three of them.
100%.
Prolongation,
100%.
phrasing, articulation. You have a student that is playing Mozart concerto.
Yes.
And you know that great notes in the classical period have a diagonal line.
Yes.
That immediately means that you're going to take half of the value of the principal note. And that's why you don't play them tra, but actually it could be a 16,
yeah.
it could be an eighth, it could be a quarter note.
Yeah, but even that needs to be...
But that has to be taught. And that's what we call musical language.
Yeah, but I think it's amazing you bring this up, but I think that even what you're saying, that's already too far.
Oh, that's
Okay,
and that's
okay.
what I mean.
I see.
Because we claim that we know music, but we go to the skills class to sing, to sight sing, to read music, to do dictation.
Yeah.
But we have not even any idea of what a treble clef is. I sat in my studio class with my teacher once, and I asked everyone, "Can you tell me what instrument you play?" "Oh, I play violin." "No, I didn't ask you. I want to know what violin you play."
Uh-huh.
"Oh, I don't know. Let me check." They don't even know who the maker is. And then as soon as they realize who the maker is, I ask them, "Can you tell me the lineage of that instrument?"
Yeah, what's
Is
the
it
story?
is it a Guarneri del Gesso model? Is it an Amati model? Who made it?
Yeah.
Who studied with? No idea. And I have asked worse questions than that. Like, for example, when was the violin created?
In general.
And they go like, "Yeah, in Italy, in the 1600s. Oh, no. No. Do you have any idea who the antecessor of the violins are? How many other lines of hypotheses we have for the construction of your own instrument? So you are telling me that you play an instrument, you go win a competition, but you have no idea what you have in your hands. And let's not even talk about the bow. Because the bow has had at least 37 to 40 different changes since Tartini, since all of these people that Viotti, like that came into realizing that the bow had to evolve in comparison. And so it's just a misconception that, because I play great and I can deliver and I can play all the Paganini caprices, that means I know about music. But then what about when you teach? What are you teaching?
Do you remember I used to do this in my violin
literature class, of course.
When we used to when I was just at awe of the fact that people didn't know.
There is people up to this day that they have no idea who Gasparo da Salo was. That they have no idea who Stradivarius was, or like who are the descendants of Giuseppe Guarneri.
But it's not even that far. Like, are we talking about the likes of Jascha Heifetz and Nathan Milstein?
Oh, they have no idea. It's like you say who Ginette Neveu was, or Misha Elman, or like you talk about Erika Morini, or Maud Powell, and they have no idea who these people was.
Yeah,
and they all play music that was premiered by them, that was dedicated by them. Who premiered Elgar Concerto? Who played the Lark Ascending?
But
Put the Walton Concerto.
But I have to tell you, I think that once again you're absolutely right. But I think it's a global issue that is affecting everyone.
It is, and that's what leads me to the next question. What are we doing so that we are facilitating this learning process in a holistic way for our students to be able to understand that it's not just playing? Because we as the foundation, we have literature classes, we have pedagogy classes, we are exposing our students. But what are we doing for the outside world? Because we cannot be the messiahs of an entire generation.
But I have to tell you, no, we can't. But honestly speaking, when you make a difference for one person, for two people, you are kind of playing that role.
Yes.
And I think that, what the foundation is doing is very unique because of that. I feel like a lot of the focus that goes around today is dealt with the fact that an opportunity is presented. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, I think it's incredible. But if music is going to be presented as this opportunity and then do whatever you want with it, I think we are missing the point.
Yeah, no, it's a waste of...
like you being who you are and the story that you had, how you came to the violin. Now, you tell me, was anybody introducing you to these musicians, to these concepts when you were young?
Yes, but it was in such an amazing way.
Well, then because this is what I want to...
people question me. They go like, how do you know so much about these concepts and language and everything? I didn't have classes.
Correct.
Where someone would sit with me and teach me about these things. It's just that I was insufferably intense.
You wanted to.
I wanted to learn those things, and I was blessed to be in an environment where a great violinist. I will never forget. I was 11. It was the first time I picked the violin after I went through, my singing classes in El Sistema and all of these things. And I did that pretty quickly.
No, but El Sistema also, before you go there, El Sistema also provided, for example, the skills, the oral skills, the
we
theory.
Did have those classes, but remember, El Sistema is an orchestral program.
Okay.
So you go directly into playing. Okay. And even though you know nothing, you are obligated to sit in an orchestra that will be playing Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony.
So basically you have to catch up really.
Absolutely.
Really.
And I remember sitting down and being asked to play an F sharp with second finger on the D string. I didn't even know how to hold the bow.
Interesting.
I didn't even know how to hold the violin. But when it comes to these concepts, with all of these things about literature, about the language of music, I remember his name was James Stern. And he was, at the time, I think, a violin professor at the New England Conservatory or the Maryland University.
Okay.
And he went to Venezuela to one of these, international exchanges. Mm-hmm. And what he did for me was life-changing. It's not just the lessons. It wasn't just the opportunity of seeing him play on his amazing $200,000 violin. Mm-hmm. But he gave me a movie named The Art of Violin.
Oh, you see?
So I was 11 and I was so eager to learn. I was so eager to know about these things. I remember my mom was tired of me watching that movie. Because I watched that movie probably zillion times. Up to the point that I knew every single language the dialogues. Oh, wow. I could say everything that Ivry Gidlitz was saying when he's talking about the C sharp in the Cesar Frank sonata that is too high. Yeah. When Ida Handel is talking about Jascha Heifetz. Yes. When Menuhin is having that interview about the.
It was a life-changing documentary.
It was, because I'm seeing that movie and I'm being exposed to something that I had no idea who Yehudi Menuhin was, who David Oistrakh was, but because of that moment.
But you just answered an interesting question that you asked earlier. Think about, that's why I was so interested to hear what you had to say about it, because you see, that role was my grandmother.
Okay.
My grandmother realized that, when we moved to Israel, the system that she was used to is not there anymore. There were no, in the communist system in particular, mm-hmm. that was a system that, again, I'm not trying to say it was better or worse, but it was one where kids from an early age, I'm talking about
4 or 5
really early. Everything has to be already then.
Mm-hmm.
You had to reach certain levels in order to continue,
Yeah.
right, to grow musically.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you just wouldn't pass.
Absolutely.
And what's really amazing is that she took it upon herself to just a wise human being who understood that he will play violin, but anything outside of that, his knowledge is not going to come from there.
Violin, yes.
And she was the one who, she back in the days with tape recorders,
Mm-hmm.
and the TV guide, when she would see something, she would highlight it, and she would always record it. I now used to watch this thing to the point that the tape was already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
was
of course. Yeah, yeah, it jumps.
Going nuts. For me, it was the. It's amazing how one thing that you're exposed to opens your eyes
Absolutely.
to so many others, and I think that's the word, maybe. Not exposed enough.
And I think that it also comes up to the point where the personality of the student and the desire of the student, that passion, that eagerness for knowledge plays a huge role. Because if I would have been exposed to that same opportunity and I wouldn't have cared, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Because the thing that made me so unique in comparison to all my classmates when I was in El Sistema is that I was the one raising the hand every 5 minutes to ask a question.
Yeah, I was like that.
Because I was insufferable. I was like, I didn't understand. So you mean that if you go from a minor third to a major third, so is the third degree the one that is being affected? So it goes.
I think you said something interesting. The fact that you had in you, I find a lot of people that don't even want to raise their hand because they're afraid of how they're going to look like.
Yeah, I didn't care at all.
By the way, you'll be surprised how that's also a huge part of what we were talking about.
Absolutely, especially in college level.
Oh
too.
My God!
It has nothing to do with age. God. It has nothing to do.
They want. I was like, any questions?
No, because they just want to go away. They just want to be done with the class.
But there we go.
They just want to be done with the class, and I remember, because this is so true. Having this knowledge, having this understanding, allowed me to just transfer all of that to the violin, and then people was just wondering, how did you went so fast?
But I have to tell you something about what you just said. Also, do you feel like that's something that I have a problem with? Also, from the other side of when we talk about the things that probably need to get better, and is music on that particular level? That's also probably not the right terminology, but with that type of dedication, is that for everyone?
I don't think so. I think that it changes based on the person too.
But we're probably saying something not very popular these days, right?
Of course. And there are people, like we know who are talking about, players that they just pick the instrument and then you just mesmerized by the things they can do.
Oh, absolutely.
But then you ask them to verbalize what they are doing, they have no idea how. Because everything was so instinctively.
No, but that's wonderful.
Everything was, and that's wonderful. They had a major career. They had an amazing path. But when it comes to teaching, it doesn't work.
I think that, but you see, you're talking specifically about teaching right now, don't you?
Absolutely, because
then
we if you are a performer, you have a completely different job, because both of us have that job. We go, and right now, I'm sorry to say, but what we do is an entertainment industry. Is you go on a concert, you're playing a violin concerto, people is paying a ticket to go see you there, you have to deliver something, and we are supposed to make the audience feel something, which I disagree. I believe that as performers, we are in charge of actually creating a platform for them to feel whatever they want to feel. I am not in charge of making this passage make you cry. You are the only one that is going to be able to be moved by it if you allow yourself to be moved by what I'm playing. Of course, for this platform, for this atmosphere to happen, you have to be an amazing player. You have to be someone that has not only the playing skill, but the personality to be able to bring that to happen. Because how many times have you been sitting on a concert hall and you see someone that is playing perfectly with such a level of control and intonation, but you are not moved emotionally by their playing, but you are mesmerized by their perfect accuracy.
But because you know something.
Because you know something. that might not be the same experience for a
For somebody,
75-year-old person that comes to this concert to let themselves enjoy what
they
they
couldn't
are
care
here.
less how many
They
notes.
don't
Yeah,
care about
yeah.
how many notes you miss or how many things you like. So that's my point. So when it comes to performance, you actually don't have to create any changes in anyone. But when it comes to teaching,
You must.
you must. And that's what I believe, because the student, number one, has, like you said, because I took this phrase for the previous podcast and for every interview, because that resonates so much with me. Boris Abramov says, it's like a verbal quotation: the student must meet the professor at the middle point. It must happen, because when I am coming all the way to look for you and you have nothing to give,
Yeah,
you are literally proving my point. You cannot teach a student that doesn't want to be taught. And when it comes to that point of view, and I am an educator and I didn't care on how to translate everything I'm capable of doing,
yeah.
then how effective can my teaching be? Because if I'm expecting to become, a YouTube tutorial or a TV
Right.
where you just look and then you imitate,
Yeah, it's a little different.
then I'm going to be criticized by, I'm not encouraging artistic personality.
Sure.
I'm not encouraging creativity.
Sure.
But let's not go that far. Basics.
But I like what you do with basics a lot. A lot of the times.
I know, but this is my point. I'm a great performer, and I'm talking about other artists that are extraordinary players. They're just mesmerizing. I just look at them and I just can't believe how they play. But when they come to teaching, and they are in front of a student, the student is just struggling with a shifting because the left hand is going faster than the bow. Mm-hmm. And they just go, oh, this is like air. This is like, the breeze and touching a floor.
You're touching my sensitive
area. Because how am I supposed to make a student understand the mechanism of violin playing, the physicality of violin playing, by making analogies and philosophical comparisons with things that don't apply to the need? Because that's the other thing. The student must meet the professor at the middle point, but we have to meet the student at the point of need.
100%.
Because, oh my goodness, the student comes all crooked, no bow, no violin, and then it's
what
playing.
Do you do with that?
What do you do with that? And then you go and try to change their life by just telling, here Tchaikovsky was having an affair, and that's why this music is so intense. So make it intense. How?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying.
Goodness, it's just the reality.
It's the reality, yeah. But I think what's really what I think that a young musician these days, especially prior to college, needs to be aware of is, we talked about it. Isn't that interesting that on YouTube you can find so much information?
Yes.
Yet somehow, this is exactly kind of like the smartphone problem. When people thought that, by having, the entire like collection of knowledge of the world in your pocket would make people smarter.
No.
It actually turned into the opposite. Somehow, even though it's all there, there's less and less awareness.
Yeah. And less usage. Because I go through this with my own students. The other day
Maybe because you don't need to fight for it as much.
Exactly, because it's so easy to get that you actually don't care, because you are hoping for someone to give it to you. You are hoping for someone to put it in your face. You are hoping for someone to actually play it for you. And that's what makes the difference between exactly.
Concept, yeah.
Or like people that comes and knocks at your door because you are fabulous at fixing this kind of issues, and they go, please tell me how. But they didn't even care to do the homework to come here to offer you something in return. And when I'm talking about something in return, I'm just merely talking about, I did my homework. I prepared myself with the resources I have, with the knowledge I have, and this is what I came up with. Mm-hmm. I'm still struggling with this. Mm-hmm. Can you guide me? Is there a different way? Is there something I'm not seeing? But they are just coming here for the magic answer.
But I think that's
Boris, just tell me how.
But I think now you're talking about creating a certain culture.
And yes, I think that's but isn't that the job of music education?
But actually, that's why I think you hit it right there. I think when you said we cannot be, the saviors of. I disagree. I think what you're doing is exactly that. I think that the fact that you are also bringing so many people on board who are watching, who are aware of those values, who are seeing what you offer to other people and realize I've never gotten that.
Yeah.
And I'm jealous. I'm
Mm-hmm.
in the most healthy
If you
way.
were,
I'm
yes.
saying, yeah, that this is capable, and the more this will be seen. Look, by the end of the day, I think like people, history also favors
Yeah.
the winners, but at the same time, um, a certain mark will be left with these people.
Absolutely.
That even if they're not musicians.
No, absolutely.
And
But
that's
what,
what is the
but what
most
I mean,
important thing.
yes, we cannot be the saviors of all.
Oh, of course
That's
not.
what I mean. But actually, by having this legacy, by trying to inspire people to do this thing, what we are actually hoping is to have many more that will join, and in their own ways, with their own projects, with their own vision and
100%.
mission, they are going to actually be able to support others. Because that's what I mean. If one organization was enough to be the saviors of the entire community, then it will be done a long time ago. But the thing is, it's not fair, because I have even had my own students at the SVS Scholar program, and I looked at them and I go, how is it possible that today you are still not aware of what all of these things mean conceptually?
Mm-hmm.
If you have YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
because it's as easy as going on it and then typing, what is a cadential 6/4?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a fabulous tutorial.
Many.
And then you go, many. And then you go, oh, but what if it's wrong? What if it's like, well, you compare them. Don't you have critical thinking?
But I think, I think you nailed that one. Critical thinking is very lacking.
And that's what I'm saying. And it's, that's again.
But also, what is critical thinking? I mean, critical thinking, when you can say that you're actually using critical thinking, you have to know something before you
absolutely you have to have preconceived knowledge.
So we are again going back to that same concept.
And we could even go even further and say that this whole problem with music students even comes from home, and from the way that they were raised, the way that they were exposed to their school, the way that, because all of these things,
they all play a role.
They all play a role. And environmental agents, that's how we call them.
Yeah.
It's not related to the environment or the climate. We are talking about the circumstances.
What are you exposed to?
What you are that affects a lot. And when you are in a classroom with a peer or a classmate that is always asking, that is always saying and everything, and you have that also, that fire of wanting to go in the same direction, you're being inspired by that.
Well,
but the problem is that what we see is the opposite. Here it comes again.
Of course.
It's the same person always talking all the time. I don't understand why the professor likes him or likes her so much.
But I think it's because music. Look, when I was young, I remember. I'll never forget this. I'm kind of lucky, I think, that impressionable, is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm looking for. I was one of these kids who always
easy to impress?
Or no, the opposite? No. In a sense, that's not what I meant. I think I was always looking from the sides. I was also kind of always encouraged at home to watch.
Oh, an observant.
Observant. Yeah, maybe that's a better word.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget one time I was with my grandmother, because like we said, my grandmother was the musical influence in my life, the biggest. And we went to a concert of students, and there was a girl playing, and a pianist stood up and said, I hope you all will remember this girl's name, because she's going to be someone to look up to, let's say. And everybody, of course, clapped. And my grandmother, I just remember her face. And I couldn't understand what made her so upset. I couldn't understand. And it was over. It's not even about how she played, or I sat in the car with Grandma and I said, Grandma, what's... She goes, how dare you put that kind of pressure on that child?
There you go.
She goes, how can you possibly say that in front of people, knowing the child is listening? And what if she won't?
Then she will have to live up to the shadow of the things that
By the way,
yes,
that's trauma.
There we go. Yes.
That's trauma.
Well, it's the same thing that we struggle, and you and I have talked about this, that concept of prodigy, of gifted, of talented. And then we literally are cursing the student from the language that we use.
I mean, don't get me
by
wrong.
using words that we cannot even define. Because what is the difference between someone, we see a student that comes to the room and is able to play a fast passage with a lot of facilities, that is able to do every single bow stroke, and we go, wow, so talented.
Very talented, yes.
That's not talent. That's just physical and mechanic facilities.
No, but even if
to
it
do
is,
something.
no, but even if it is, that's actually, I think, what you're saying. Let's say they do it, and this so-called affinity for the instrument is a huge talent. Let's
Okay.
say it is. You know what I mean? For the sake of argument, I'm
Okay.
just saying. I'm not saying that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For the sake of, when you take an individual, especially of a young age, because we're talking about musical education at a very young age. I was never told at home, ever, that what I do is extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I was never told at home that what I do is better.
Mm-hmm.
I was told at home that you need to develop, if you really love this, playing your violin is only a fraction. We know now, more than ever, that our level on the instrument, it's a given, and it's the starting point of what you will be doing in your life.
But then you are arriving to an amazing point. We do those, we made the mistake, or teachers made the mistake of making those statements. Oh, you are so talented and everything. So the people that is around is not stupid. If you have another child that cannot do what that one that you so-called claim talented did, that other student immediately assumes, I am not talented.
Worthless.
So my worth is less than her or his worth because I am not able to replicate.
Especially young children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then we come into the other thing, that the way that we treat the student, that we frame the things that they are capable of doing, are also detrimental for their own development.
Oh my.
Because I believe I have a very, very gifted student that you know, that you have worked with, but that kid is in checkmate at every class. Because I don't believe, from applying neurolinguistic programming and neuroscience and all of the knowledge that I have, he is not in the age of needing to be aware of the things that he's capable of doing.
That's an interesting observation.
He is on the age where he just needs to work hard to understand how to keep improving the things that he already is able to do. Nice. So that the ones that are not yet developed can be developed by himself.
Great.
Because the other thing is, and I see this so much, we see teachers being very surprised and enlightened and wow, so inspired by a talented student, and the first thing they do is, oh, here we go, Bruch violin concerto. Oh, Tchaikovsky violin concerto. When the only thing that you saw of the student being capable of doing was a bunch of shifting and jumps and everything. So how do you think that that's playing the violin? Where is the sound? Where is the vibrato? Where is the basics of understanding that for you to be able to play Tchaikovsky violin concerto, you at least have to be able.
Well, we always talk about it. You earn.
Exactly.
Right? To a certain degree. You have to earn the right.
Yeah.
To actually, because I think that a lot of people are really, my teacher told me this when I was younger. She always said something. You see, certain things now, when we're older,
make more sense.
Not only they make more sense, you understand how valuable they are as even comments.
Mm-hmm.
She said to me once, she goes, whenever you open a score of a composer, is as if you're sitting, like we're sitting right now, and you are communicating with them.
With a person, yeah.
So you're being very disrespectful when you're playing the wrong notes over and over and over. You're being very disrespectful when you're playing the wrong rhythm. And these are for us basics. But
and it hurts a lot.
It hurts, but
because at our stage right now, it's wow.
It is
like
wow.
how dare I not pay attention or not being able to go back to the basics things of reading or practicing when it goes. So imagine a student. Imagine working with student that has the fire and the desire of going as fast as they can because they want to jump from Tchaikovsky to Sibelius concerto. And then isn't it our job to actually, I'm not trying to encapsulate or put the student on a box. I'm actually trying
it will never work, right?
No, it won't work. But you have to make sure that student understands that it's a process and that process should be enjoyed and not internalized. It's more about, when you have two things and you merge them together. Because I see this all the time. You have no idea how many times this student has asked me, can I please start the 7th page? Because that's my favorite. No.
Earn that.
Yes.
And
then you know what is the unbelievable part? They go, okay, can I send you a video? Yes, absolutely. And then I see the video and I go, how in the name of God, this kid by himself?
Because there's a need.
Because there is a need. And it's not just his. He wants to prove to his teacher that he's capable by himself.
Because it also shows how much psychology goes into teaching.
Absolutely. And how much we are in charge of inspiring the kid.
Couldn't agree more. Agree more.
And I would love...
You know this story. How I had a student once, and I assigned Saint-Saëns' third violin concerto to that student, and that student looked at me and he goes, "But it's a student concerto." with the kind of like a dismissive.
Yes, like.
And
what is this?
And you know me well by now. It's hard to make me go like speechless.
Yes.
I was.
Oh.
I thought you were a student. That's what goes into my mind. I don't even.
That's funny. I don't
even know what to say. I'm kind of at loss for words. And then it came to me. The level of disrespect to the composer. Leave me aside. Leave the violin away. So Saint-Saëns wrote this piece
for a student,
thinking that this is my student concerto. I have a hard time believing that.
Oh, no.
And like when you hear these comments, you really start understanding who is after what.
Yeah.
Who is really after learning? Who is after
just
showing what they are, how much they know, how much they play. But to me, one thing that I just wanted to tell you in particular. This is what I love about our profession the most.
And this is what is passionate
because
about.
all of these things, all of what we talk about, the moment they go on stage.
Oh, yes.
It's all over.
Yes.
Because all this talking and this pretending or not pretending or thinking or wanting, show me.
Yeah.
But show me not here in this room or show me on stage.
Yeah.
Show me, because by the end of the day, you claim to be let's say a music performance major.
Yeah.
And you want to perform, and one day you want to...
Then go ahead.
Please.
Yeah. And don't prove the audience, because you are an artist. You owe the audience what you do.
But then there's always the excuses, and that's why music. The one thing that we love music the most is because, or the violin in this particular case, because we're violinists.
Mm-hmm.
The violin doesn't understand these things.
No.
If you play
this is just
badly,
a human thing.
If you play it badly,
the violin is not aware.
The violin is the most honest companion.
Yeah.
And music to that degree that you will ever have. Not even our closest people. Because, the closest people will also find ways to tell us things without completely hurting. Violin is so neutral that it will be the most devastating or the best thing that has ever happened.
Definitely.
But I don't think it's just violin. It's a trombone.
Yeah.
It's
Any
it's
instrument.
an oboe. It's a viola. Whenever you treat that with that type of respect, then the respect to the composer will come, like we spoke about, to your education, to realizing that this is not enough. This is just the foundation.
And not just to you, to everyone around you.
Absolutely.
Because this is another thing. You just remind me of an anecdote with one of my students. I remember he was playing, I think, Haydn C major concerto. And then I told him, like, okay, look, it's not working. And you just prove yourself that you cannot play the concerto yet because you are lacking on resources that are technical to be able to play sixths, thirds, and all of these double stops that you haven't been exposed to.
Correct.
So as much as I want to support you because you love this concerto, I cannot allow you to hurt yourself by trying to play something you are not ready for. So I want you to do Bach A minor, violin concerto. And immediately the comment of the student was, he was devastated. My teacher just sent me back to play something that is easier. It means I'm going backwards.
Of course.
It means, and we're talking about 10, 12, I think he was 11 at that time. 11-year-old boy. And then I sat down with him because his mom called me. He hasn't stopped crying. And of course, all of this teaching is through Zoom. And I call him and I go, son, who was the last performance you saw of this violin concerto, like the A minor? Oh, Hilary Hahn. And do you think every time Hilary Hahn plays this concerto, she's going backwards?
Exactly.
And he goes, oh.
Right.
And I go, do you think that every time she is recording the Allemande by Bach, which is so-called claim a very easy movement, she is going backwards? Do you think that every time she just played Prokofiev concerto and now she's doing the two Bach violin, is she going backwards? Exactly. Is she playing less? Is she playing worse? And he was, I understand now. I'm sorry for what I said. So music is music.
Exactly.
No matter the difficulty.
Exactly.
When that kid said that,
you understood that?
I understood that kid is going to become what we already know he's going to become.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he is the one leading his own path. But he had to be called out.
Because it's important in life to be... Because it is important. You know, what I call like when life slaps you in the face without any warning whatsoever. At first it hurts. And then you're like, oh, I'm glad that happened.
It's the same thing that happened to me. I will never forget when Sally O'Reilly told me, I wish I was a fly in your practice room so I could see how you practice intonation. That was the most hurtful thing ever I have ever experienced, because I was playing Vorja violin concerto and I missed a shifting. And it was da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and I completely missed the shift. And she told me, you are extremely gifted to miss one note. And then that was so hurtful to actually realize I don't play in tune.
That's the same thing that happened to me with Mr. Markov. When I literally missed, I didn't even miss. I mean, I missed obviously, but it was like he changed two fingerings, Khachaturian concerto at that time, and they whistled like there's two harmonics. They whistled. They didn't speak. He stopped, and he's like, "Whenever you're ready, come again." Because we're wasting our time. And I was a boy. I wasn't. This wasn't like 18, 19. I was 14, 13, and nobody has ever said something like that to me. And I was devastated. Yeah. I wanted to go away. You know what I mean?
Well, I still remember I was 21 when Professor Schwartz told me, you are very talented, but you know nothing about music. And then I was like, so then what am I doing with the instrument? And then when I was finally ready, and he sat down with me and he told me what he actually meant. My world changed completely. The way I saw music was not the same anymore. Now I couldn't see the contour of a phrase without thinking about the direction of the music or the line or anything. They stopped being just notes and sounds and being moved just what I was. Correct. By what I felt. Like, oh, because I like it. No. That there is something there. And he would sit with me on the piano and go like, what is the difference between this chord and this chord? And that would completely... So, but you see, the student also have to be ready to be exposed to something like that.
No doubt about that. No doubt about
so, I know that we have 1 more minute. So, I think I would like for you to maybe give some advice to aspiring music students that are wanting to pursue this dream, of becoming a musician, whether they want to be music educators or music performers, and what skills do you think are essential for succeeding in this process?
Okay, so I think it's very hard at an early age to really know where this journey will take you. I think my biggest or my most valuable advice would be, excuse me, and I keep saying that to everyone kind of like already for years because I'm just kind of relating to myself, is not to take anything for granted. When you have a oral skills class, push to the very top. When you have a theory class, when you have a chamber music coaching, don't come with your part ready. Open a score. Learn how to read scores. Yeah, like there's so many things that you can do that are benefit. I feel like a lot of the time students think they're separate things. How can I take so much upon, myself? There's too much. I can barely find time to practice.
Yeah.
But actually, they're all integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And the quicker we actually find out how integrated they are, the more we realize that practicing is not just with the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
You know this very well. That there's a lot that goes, and especially for young people who want to go into music, they have to remember that they have to be very honest about what they want from music. And I know it's also a very loaded statement, but at the same time, they have to be adaptable to change, number one, to what is being asked of them, number two, to their surrounding. Music is the kind of world where you move. We don't even, this is
that's a completely different topic. We'll come back for episode number 20.
Episode 2, 20. Yeah. People, teachers, approaches. You have to be what I love, that analogy. You need to always check how clean your filter is, because after a while you don't even know what it is that you're breathing. And it's very important to always have these moments where you, I don't know, some people do it, I would think some people would do it in different times, but every couple of months stopping and observing, what have I done? What have I been doing actively? What I was lacking on? What it is that now I'm exposed to that I actually love that I had no idea. Some musicians come in thinking they're going to be soloists, turn into chamber musicians. Some musicians come in thinking their job and their dream is to become an orchestral musician. Suddenly, they realize it might not be for them. Mm-hmm. But you see, there's the taboo is like, how dare I say it? No. Mm-hmm. You have to be very honest with yourself. And by saying that, maybe this is not for me, wonderful. Since when this is some kind of a
sin?
Or a failure.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you one last thing. I keep in touch with students who did not pursue music after their undergraduate degree.
Okay.
And sometimes even after graduate degrees. And I always try to see how their lives are post, let's say, music school. Mm-hmm. I am so happy to say that almost every single person is always saying that if it wouldn't be for this experience as a whole, not just playing the violin, but mm-hmm. having all these commitments, all these classes, being so, my life wouldn't be as fulfilling and rich, and I wouldn't know how much I developed, because we talk about like how many med schools are looking at musicians with a very like favorable, mm-hmm. Oh, you do music. Yes. Okay. I'll go as far as saying even in industries that have nothing to do with music, but because a student got a scholarship to go and do their grad studies at a particular university and then applied for a job that has absolutely nothing to do with that, but they said, oh, you're a graduate of this school. Okay, so they look favorably upon, but again, it had nothing to do with music.
Yeah,
what they do. But you see, music led them to a certain place, to a certain person, to a certain life that now they're happy with because they found themselves. But you see, that journey was not a waste. A lot of people think, oh, what a waste of time this was. But actually, what they're not seeing is that music develops way more than passages and fast fingers. And the moment you start seeing that with, like you said, interactions with others, and how you start realizing that this gift in general, by the way, playing an instrument, we already know how much it does to the brain and to what capacity. Of course, we don't know fully, but we know how much it affects. You know, I never look at anything as a waste of time, even especially failures. And I think that's what music students need to remember. When you're going to come to a program, this is your opportunity to fail actively, let's call it, right? Where if you, because everybody's afraid to fail, by the way, that's another topic. Yeah. That fear of failure should be transformed into, I want to go out there and I want to have the opportunity to fail, so I'll know what not to do the next time. But if it's always this fear, I have to excel, I have to be better than him or her, and see, that's it, it's over. It has nothing to do with music. Yeah. Absolutely nothing. So for me, it's being adaptable, being open-minded, and according to what we're talking about all the time, is being open to things that you may never, ever thought you would have been involved with. Yep. And I know those are very generic things, but in order to really understand yourself, especially at this age, college, 18 to 22, it's such a sensitive time in our lives that if we are like put all your eggs in one basket, as we say, it's not a good idea. So yeah, so that's what I would say.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and I'm so happy that we could do this. And for everyone listening to us, if you want to follow our social media, please do so by following us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube through the handle of Vargas Foundation. And we will keep bringing a lot of amazing content and guest artists and performers for our podcast. So thank you so much.